It was a quiet afternoon when everything changed. I had settled into the rare comfort of solitude, sitting in my living room with a cup of steaming tea cradled in my hands and a well-worn novel resting on my lap. The soft afternoon sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the wooden floor. My house, which had been in my family for decades, felt like a haven, a silent witness to countless stories and memories. Every corner held a fragment of the past. From the creaky stairs I had learned to navigate as a child to the cozy kitchen where the aroma of spices and freshly cooked meals had always drawn the family together. Even the old armchair by the fireplace, worn at the edges, seemed to embrace me with a sense of belonging. For years, life had been predictable, and that predictability had brought me comfort. I liked the quiet, the steady rhythm of my days, and the way the world outside seemed to pause when I was within these walls. But all of that calm, all of that security, was shattered in the blink of an eye. The front door slammed open with a force that made my heart leap into my throat. The sound echoed through the house, reverberating off the walls and silencing the ticking of the clock for a moment. I looked up in alarm and froze. Standing in the doorway was Priya, my daughter-in-law, a woman I had once welcomed into my home with open arms. But the expression on her face was unlike anything I had ever seen before. There was anger there, raw and fierce, determination that seemed almost unyielding. And something else, something darker, that I could not yet name. "Mom," she said sharply, her voice cutting through the calm like a knife. "I need the house keys. Now!" I blinked, unsure if I had heard her correctly. My hands tightened around the teacup as I tried to steady my racing thoughts. "Excuse me?" I asked cautiously, my voice barely above a whisper. "I said, give me your house keys," she repeated, stepping further into the room. Her movements were sudden and precise, deliberate. Before I could react, her hand shot out, and the sharp sting of her slap spread across my face. I gasped, clutching my cheek in shock. The warmth of the impact lingered, and for a moment, I could barely breathe. Priya's eyes blazed with an intensity one had never seen before. "You've held on to this house for too long," she said, her voice low, steady, and dangerous. "It's time it's mine. Don't make me do this the hard way." I struggled to comprehend the situation. My son, Arav, was not home. It seemed she had arrived without warning, without explanation. The woman I had welcomed into my family years ago, the one I had once trusted completely, had become unrecognizable, a bold, threatening stranger standing in my living room. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound firm. "This house has been in my family for generations. You can't just demand it." She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Generations don't matter if you're not willing to let go," she said, stepping closer. "Arav and I are planning our future, and this house is part of it. Give me the keys, or I'll take them by force." A wave of disbelief, fear, and sadness swept over me. I had raised my son to be kind, compassionate, and respectful. How could he allow his wife to behave like this? How had the woman I once welcomed as family become someone so aggressive, so threatening, so utterly unrecognizable? The room felt suddenly smaller, stifling, as if the very walls were closing in. Memories flashed before me. Family dinners where laughter had filled the space, birthday celebrations with colorful balloons, quiet afternoons with Arav curled up beside me as I read stories. Every memory seemed to hang in the air, mocking me as I faced the reality of Priya's hostility. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. My mind raced with questions I might never get answered. Why was she acting this way? Why now? And most painfully, where was my son in all of this? Priya advanced another step, her eyes never leaving mine. The weight of her determination pressed down on me. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that this confrontation was only the beginning. There was no reasoning with her in this state. No amount of words, no amount of pleading, would make her relent. She seemed consumed by a single-minded purpose, and I could see that my sanctuary, the home I had cherished for so long, was under threat. I wanted to retreat, to find somewhere safe within the house, but there was nowhere to go. Every corner, every room, every hallway that had once been comforting now felt vulnerable, exposed. I felt a flicker of anger rise within me, mingled with fear. I had built this home with care, filled it with love and memories. I would not, let it be taken from me so easily. "Priya," I said, my voice trembling but growing firmer, "you will not take this house from me. It has been in my family for decades. I will not give you the keys, not now, not ever." Her expression darkened further, and for a moment, I thought she might strike again. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. I felt my body tense, ready to defend myself if necessary, though I had no idea how I could possibly stop her. "Think carefully, Mom," she said, her voice low and menacing. "I am not someone you want to cross. This house will be mine, one way or another. You can either hand over the keys now, or face the consequences." I felt a lump in my throat. The reality of her words settled over me like a storm cloud. I could see the determination in her eyes, the unshakable belief that she was entitled to what she wanted. And for the first time, I realized that my son was either complicit or powerless, and that realization hurt more than the slap, more than the fear, more than anything else. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to think clearly. I needed a plan, a way to protect what was mine, to protect the memories and love that this house represented. I couldn't let panic dictate my actions. I needed to remain calm, to be strategic. Priya took another step forward, her hand twitching as if ready to grab something, to take what she wanted by force. My pulse raced, and I felt the walls of my sanctuary close in even more. The room seemed to shrink around us, the air heavy with tension and unspoken threats. I looked around desperately, my eyes landing on the phone on the side table. Perhaps calling for help was my only option. Yet, even as I reached for it, a part of me feared what might happen in the moments before I could act. This confrontation, I realized, was just the beginning. Priya's sudden aggression, her insistence on taking what she believed belonged to her, marked a turning point. The calm, peaceful life I had known was gone. My home, my sanctuary, my memories, they were all under threat. And now, I had to decide how far I was willing to go to protect them. In that moment, standing in my living room, the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future pressed down on me. I had no choice but to prepare for a battle I had never imagined, a confrontation that would test everything I had held dear. The unexpected arrival had changed everything, and there was no turning back. I took a deep, shuddering breath and tried to steady myself. My heart was racing, my palms clammy as I stared at Priya. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the living room, making the space feel smaller, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in on us. "Priya, stop this madness," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "You can't just demand what isn't yours. Arav isn't here, and you're out of line." Her face twisted, a mixture of rage and frustration contorting her features. Her lips pressed into a tight line, her jaw set with determination. "Out of line," she spat. "I've waited patiently while you held on to something that doesn't even belong to you anymore. I'm done waiting." Her words, sharp as knives, cut through me. Yet beneath the fury, I could see it, just for a fleeting second, a hint of something else. Desperation. Fear. A trembling vulnerability that contradicted the aggression she radiated. It struck me that this was more than greed, more than a desire for possession. Something had pushed her to the edge, and if I wanted to protect my home, I needed to understand it. "Why are you so desperate for the keys?" I asked, my voice softening, trying to reach her beyond the anger. "What's really going on, Priya? Why is this so important to you?" She froze, her hand hovering midair, as if my question had momentarily caught her off guard. For the first time that afternoon, the fire in her eyes faltered. A brief pause passed, almost fragile, as if she were debating whether to reveal the truth or retreat back behind her armor of anger. "Arav promised me this house years ago," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "I've been patient, but now I need to secure our future. You've had your time here. It's ours now." I shook my head slowly, hurt and disbelief flooding me. The words were a bitter blow. My mind spun with memories of raising my son, the countless sacrifices, the love and care I had poured into this home. "Promises don't erase history," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This house is part of my life. My family's life. I won't hand it over without discussion. You can't just take it." Her eyes narrowed, her pupils sharp with resolve. "Then I'll take it anyway," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of determination and raw fear. It was almost as if the trembling betrayed the panic beneath her aggression. She reached toward the kitchen counter, where the house keys gleamed under the sunlight. Instinctively, I moved to block her. My body tensed, a defensive reflex taking over. The two of us collided over the keys, our hands grasping the small metal ring with equal force. Neither of us would relent. The struggle was brief but intense, a clash of wills that seemed to make time slow down. The keys slipped from our grasp and clattered to the floor with a metallic jingle that sounded far louder than it should have. We froze immediately, each of us breathing heavily, staring at each other as if assessing the other's resolve. I took a step back, trying to collect my thoughts. I noticed the way her hands shook, not just from exertion but from the tension coiling through her entire body. Her eyes, wild and unyielding, betrayed a deep, gnawing fear. Fear of loss, fear of instability, fear of being left behind. And suddenly, I realized that beneath the aggression, Priya was desperate, just like me. "You're scared," I said softly, almost as if confessing a secret, not accusing her. "I see it. You're afraid of what might happen if you don't have control over this, over everything. But this isn't the way to handle it." Her gaze flickered, and for a fleeting second, the anger seemed to falter, replaced by something raw, vulnerable. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking slightly. I can't afford to lose this. Arav promised me. He promised me everything would be ours. And now it feels like it's slipping through my fingers." I felt a pang of sorrow, knowing that my son's actions, or perhaps his silence, had contributed to this situation. I had trusted him to mediate, to act as a bridge between his wife and me, but he was nowhere to be seen. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me. I had to find a way to stop her, to protect the home, but also to reach her, to calm the storm she had brought into my living room. Knees shaking, hands trembling, heart racing. "I get it," I said, moving a fraction closer but keeping my tone gentle. "We're both afraid. I'm afraid of losing my home, of losing the memories of my family. You're afraid of losing the life you imagined. But grabbing the keys won't fix anything. It'll only make things worse. We need to talk." Her eyes searched mine, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across her face. The fire of anger that had burned so brightly all afternoon now wavered, and I realized that this might be my chance. A chance to reach her beyond the rage, to remind her that beneath it all, we were both human, both clinging to something we loved. "I know you feel entitled, Priya," I said, taking a careful step closer. "And I know Arav made promises, but promises don't erase the past. They don't erase the love and memories that have been built here. If you want to secure your future, it can't be by destroying what's already been made." Her lips pressed together, a quiet struggle playing across her features. I could see her breathing, uneven, shaky, the storm within her colliding with the storm outside. The house was quiet again, the ticking of the clock filling the silence as if marking each tense second. I bent down and picked up the keys from the floor, holding them in my hand. "We can work this out," I said, my voice firm yet soothing. "We can talk to Arav together. There's no need for force, no need for anger. But I can't just give you what's mine, what's our family's, without understanding, without respect. That's not how this works." Priya's hand hovered over the keys again, but this time, she didn't reach for them. Her shoulders sagged slightly, the tension in her body easing just a little. Her eyes met mine, and I saw the fear, the desperation, the uncertainty, all of it laid bare. And for the first time since she had stormed into my house, I felt a sliver of hope. Perhaps this confrontation wasn't the end. Perhaps it was only the beginning of a longer, harder conversation. And as I stood there, holding the keys, I realized that protecting my home wasn't just about keeping possession. It was about finding a way to bridge the gap between anger and understanding, fear and trust. The storm in the living room had quieted for now. But I knew this was far from over. Priya's arrival, her aggression, and the desperation that had fueled it were only the first act in a drama that was just beginning. And I had to be ready, for her, for myself, and for the house that held not just bricks and mortar, but decades of memories, love, and family history. After the heated confrontation that had left both Priya and me shaken, I decided to step back. The adrenaline that had coursed through me all afternoon was fading, replaced by a gnawing sense of exhaustion and unease. The living room, once a sanctuary filled with quiet warmth, now felt charged, like the air had been thickened by the anger and fear that had passed between us. I realized that resistance alone would not solve the problem. I needed answers, not just defiance, not just walls of no, but clarity about why Priya had acted with such violence. Later that evening, as twilight painted the sky in muted shades of pink and gray, I called Arav. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed his number, the phone feeling heavier than usual in my grip. When he arrived, he looked concerned, his brow furrowed, his posture tight with worry. "Mom, what happened?" he asked, his voice hurried, almost panicked, as he rushed to my side. "Are you okay?" I motioned for him to sit, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "I'm fine," I said, though the sting on my cheek reminded me otherwise. "But Priya, she came here today. She demanded the house keys. She hit me, Arav." His face fell immediately, a mixture of shock and guilt washing over him. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from his younger years when he felt helpless. I didn't know she would react like this," he said, his voice low, troubled. "I thought she'd wait until we discussed it properly." We sat together in the living room, the soft ticking of the clock marking the passing seconds, a stark contrast to the chaos that had erupted earlier. I recounted the confrontation in detail. The sudden slam of the door, her words, the anger that radiated from her like heat, the slap, the struggle over the keys. Arav listened in silence, absorbing each moment as if trying to reconstruct it in his mind. After I finished, he leaned back in the armchair, his face drawn. "I understand why you're upset, Mom. You have every right to be," he said quietly. I didn't anticipate that her emotions would boil over like this. "But I think there's more going on than just wanting the house." I raised an eyebrow, curiosity mingling with lingering fear. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice cautious. Arav hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen as if searching for the right words. "Priya has always felt insecure about her position in the family," he admitted. "She's never felt fully accepted, no matter how much we tried to include her. And I think she believes that owning the house would give her stability, a sense of control over her life and her future. She's been waiting for years, hoping she could have this, and when it seemed uncertain, her frustration, her fear, it came out the only way she knew how." I listened, letting his words sink in. Slowly, a picture began to form in my mind. The aggression, the threats, the desperation, it wasn't purely greed or entitlement. It was fear. Fear of losing her place in the family, fear of insecurity, fear that she might be left without the life she envisioned with Arav. The house, I realized, had become more than bricks and mortar for her. It was a symbol, a talisman that represented safety, control, and permanence in a life that felt uncertain. "But surely she could have spoken to you," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "We could have resolved this together. Why resort to force?" Arav sighed heavily, running a hand over his face. "She didn't see another way, Mom. She's impulsive, I know. She doesn't always think through her actions. And yes, she has her flaws, but this isn't just about being unreasonable. It's about fear. It's about wanting to secure something she feels she deserves. She's desperate, and when desperation meets impatience, it can look violent." I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. The weight of the revelation pressed on me, a mixture of sorrow, frustration, and a faint understanding. My son was right. Beneath Priya's aggression, beneath the slap and the threats, there was a human being terrified of losing her footing in the world. A person grasping at a sense of permanence and control that she felt slipping away. "Do you think she realizes how far she went today?" I asked quietly, almost to myself. "I don't know," Arav admitted. "She probably doesn't. Or maybe she does, and she's ashamed. But shame doesn't undo fear. It doesn't make her stop needing what she thinks she must have." We sat in silence, letting the room breathe around us. The tension that had gripped the house all afternoon seemed to settle slightly, though the echo of Priya's anger still lingered in the corners. I thought about the years of family memories stored in these walls. The laughter, the celebrations, the quiet evenings spent reading or talking. I realized that protecting this house was no longer just about ownership. It was about protecting what it represented, a life built with love, patience, and shared history. Yet, I also recognized that this confrontation was not simply a matter of keeping Priya out. To do so without understanding her motives might only escalate the conflict. If I wanted a resolution, I had to see beyond the surface anger and threats. I had to understand her fear, her insecurity, and her desire for stability. Maybe we need to talk to her," I suggested, my voice tentative. "Not as adversaries, but as family. She needs to know that we see her, that we understand her fears, but also that there are boundaries. That she can't just take what isn't hers without a discussion." Arav nodded slowly, relief and determination mixing on his face. "I agree, Mom. I think she needs to feel heard, to know that we're not against her. But we also need to set limits. The house is part of your history, your life. It can't just be claimed in anger." I felt a small measure of hope begin to bloom. Perhaps this confrontation, as frightening and painful as it had been, could lead to something constructive. Perhaps Priya's fear, once acknowledged and addressed, could be calmed, and a path toward understanding could emerge. "We'll need patience," I said, more to myself than to Ariv. "And we'll need honesty from her, from you, and from me. If we can do that, maybe there's a way forward without more conflict." Ariv reached over and gently squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out, Mom. Together." For the first time that evening, I allowed myself to believe that the storm might be weathered, that the violence and anger might be replaced with understanding. The house, with its decades of memories, still felt like home. And I realized that the key to protecting it was not just guarding the physical space. It was navigating the fragile, tangled human emotions that had led to this moment. As night fell and the sky darkened outside, I knew the confrontation was only the beginning. Priya's fear and desperation were real, and so were mine. The challenge ahead was not just about possession, but about reconciling the past, addressing the present, and ensuring that the future, ours and hers, could coexist. And for the first time, I felt the faintest glimmer of hope that understanding, however difficult, might be possible. The morning sun streamed gently through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns across the living room where I had placed 2 chairs facing each other. The air was calm, almost serene, a stark contrast to the storm of the previous day. After hours of reflection, deep conversations with Ariv, and sleepless nights thinking about what had transpired, I realized that confrontation alone would not solve this. I needed dialogue, calm, honest, and deliberate. When Priya arrived, her posture was tense. Her steps were careful, almost hesitant, as though she feared the walls themselves might judge her for what had happened. I motioned for her to sit, and for a moment, the silence stretched between us like a fragile thread, each of us unsure whether it would hold or snap. "Priya," I began gently, my voice low and deliberate, "I invited you here today because I want us to talk. I understand why you're upset, but slapping me and demanding the keys is not the way to solve this. We need to find a solution together, one that respects both of us." She didn't meet my eyes. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, twisting a handkerchief, a small sign of nervousness that betrayed the storm of emotions beneath her calm exterior. I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm being ignored, like my future is uncertain. Everything feels unstable, like it could slip away at any moment." I nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. Her fear was raw, unfiltered, and painfully human. "I understand," I said. "I truly do. But this house is part of my life too. It represents decades of memories, of love, of family. It isn't just bricks and mortar. It's a repository of my past, my son's past, and everything we've built together. I can't simply hand it over without thought or discussion." Her eyes flickered toward mine, and for a moment, I saw the faintest spark of vulnerability beneath the armor of anger. The tension in the room was thick, yet it was no longer suffocating. I realized that she had come here not just to take, but to seek assurance, to find a way to secure her future. "What if," I paused, choosing my words carefully, "we work together to find a solution that ensures both your security and mine? One that allows you and Ariv to feel stable without me losing everything I've built here." She hesitated, chewing her lip, a clear sign that the idea had not occurred to her before. Slowly, she lifted her gaze, meeting mine with an expression that was a mixture of hope, uncertainty, and cautious curiosity. I don't know if that's possible," she said softly. "I just want to know that our future isn't going to crumble, that I won't be left with nothing." I leaned forward slightly, my hands resting on my knees. "Then let's be honest with each other. Let's set boundaries, make agreements, and create timelines. If we approach this together, there's no need for threats or anger. We can make sure your future is secure, Priya, while also respecting the home and history that belong to my family." For a long moment, she said nothing. The room was silent, save for the quiet hum of the clock and the faint rustle of leaves outside the window. Slowly, she nodded, a small gesture but one filled with significance. It was the first step toward mutual understanding. "I think I can agree to that," she said finally, her voice steadier now. "I'll wait until proper arrangements are made. But I need to know there's a plan, that this isn't just empty words." I smiled faintly, relief washing over me. "There's a plan, Priya. We'll discuss timelines, what steps we need to take, and how we can communicate honestly moving forward. We'll set clear boundaries so no one feels threatened, and no one feels ignored." The conversation stretched on for hours, both of us speaking honestly and carefully. I explained why the house was so important to me, not just as property, but as the physical embodiment of decades of memories, family milestones, and a sanctuary for the people I loved. I spoke of the moments Arv had spent as a child playing in the garden, the family dinners that filled the rooms with laughter and warmth, and the quiet evenings when I had poured myself into reading and reflection. Priya listened intently, occasionally interjecting with her own thoughts and concerns. She shared memories of her own, of the years she had spent trying to find her place within our family, of the moments she had felt overlooked, and the fears that had driven her actions the previous day. It became clear that her aggression was not born of malice, but of fear and a deep desire for stability. We discussed practical solutions, how the ownership and management of the house could be structured to ensure fairness, how timelines for key decisions could be established, and how communication between all three of us could be improved to avoid misunderstandings in the future. By the end of the evening, a fragile but tangible sense of understanding had taken root. Priya agreed to wait, to approach the situation with patience and openness, and to work with Arv and me to find a solution that honored everyone's needs. The tension that had hung over the house like a storm cloud began to lift, replaced by a cautious calm. Yet, despite the progress, the memory of that slap lingered, a vivid reminder of the dangers of unresolved conflict. It was a mark of the raw emotions that could flare up when fear and desperation collide, a lesson in the importance of communication, patience, and empathy. I carried that memory with me, not as a source of resentment, but as a warning. The peace we had reached today was fragile, and maintaining it would require vigilance, honesty, and mutual respect. As Priya left that evening, there was a subtle change in the atmosphere of the house. The walls seemed to breathe easier, and even the old armchair by the fireplace, worn and familiar, seemed to settle back into its place as if sensing the shift. I felt a cautious hope that the storm could be weathered, that the past, present, and future of our family could find a balance, and that the house would remain a place of shared memories rather than division. Sitting alone afterward, I reflected on the lessons of the day. Fear and misunderstanding had brought us to the brink, but honest communication and willingness to listen had brought us back from it. The house, after all, was more than a building. It was a symbol of what families endure, what they fight for, and what they must protect not only with walls and locks, but with patience, compassion, and understanding. And as night fell and the quiet settled in once more, I realized that while the battle for understanding was far from over, we had taken the first step toward harmony. A step that promised, if nurtured carefully, a future where trust and respect could replace fear and aggression, where the house could once again be a sanctuary rather than a battleground. Weeks passed, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the house began to reclaim the sense of peace it had always held. The air felt lighter, the familiar creaks and groans of the old wooden floors seemed less like echoes of conflict and more like gentle reminders of history and home. Sunlight spilled through the windows in warm, golden streams, illuminating the corners that had been shadowed by tension only days ago. Priya and I had begun to communicate more openly, a careful dance of words and gestures that required patience from both of us. At first, the conversations were awkward, each of us testing boundaries, measuring tone, gauging reactions. There were moments when frustration flared or old resentments resurfaced. But Arv was always there, calmly mediating, ensuring that neither of us felt sidelined or dismissed. His presence acted as a stabilizing force, a bridge between two people who had once been on the verge of irreparable conflict. "I appreciate the effort you're making," I said to Priya one afternoon as we discussed how to organize the house for a small family gathering. "It means a lot that you're willing to work together, to communicate instead of react." Priya looked down for a moment, then met my gaze, a hesitant smile tugging at the corner of her lips. I've been trying," she admitted quietly. "It's not easy. I know I overreacted before. I've always wanted to feel secure, and I thought taking control would fix everything." Her words reminded me of the underlying fear that had driven her earlier aggression. The same fear Arv had described, the same fear I had glimpsed behind her anger. It wasn't malice, it was insecurity, a longing to ensure stability in a world that often felt uncertain. Understanding this allowed me to respond with empathy rather than resentment. "I know, Priya," I said softly, "and I understand, but stability and security can't come from force or threats. They come from trust, communication, and mutual respect. That's something we can build together." Slowly, step by step, the old wounds began to heal. We established boundaries that respected both our positions. Specific times for discussions about the house, agreed-upon limits for decisions, and clear channels of communication. Arav helped facilitate these agreements, gently reminding us when emotions threatened to override reason. We also found small moments to connect outside of conflict. Shared cups of tea, casual conversations in the kitchen, laughter at family memories revisited. These moments, though minor, became the mortar that rebuilt trust and strengthened the fragile bridge between us. The experience taught me lessons I hadn't anticipated. I learned the value of patience. Patience not only with others but with oneself, in acknowledging fears and mistakes without letting them define the present. I learned the importance of empathy, of looking beyond actions to understand the human motivations behind them. And I learned that boundaries are not barriers meant to isolate, but frameworks meant to protect and nurture relationships, ensuring that respect is maintained while emotions are expressed. Priya's aggressive behavior had been shocking, no doubt about it. The slap, the threats, the sheer audacity of her actions. It was something I never expected from someone I had once trusted completely. Yet, beneath that surface, her actions revealed deeper truths, fears, insecurities, and unmet needs that demanded attention. Recognizing these truths allowed me to approach her with compassion rather than retaliation, turning a moment of conflict into an opportunity for understanding and growth. One evening, as we sat together discussing minor repairs for the garden, Arav smiled at both of us. "Look at this," he said, gesturing around the room. "The house feels like home again. Not just because of the walls, but because of the way we've all started to listen and respect each other." It was true. The house, once a battlefield of emotion and power struggles, had begun to feel alive in a different way. It no longer radiated tension or unspoken resentment. Instead, it radiated cooperation, compromise, and shared responsibility. Each decision we made together, each boundary we respected, became a reinforcement of the trust we were rebuilding. Through these small, consistent efforts, the relationship between Priya and me evolved. We began to see each other not as adversaries vying for control, but as partners in a shared space, caretakers of a legacy that belonged to both the past and the present. Moments of tension still arose occasionally. Old habits die slowly, but they no longer defined our interactions. Each disagreement became an opportunity to practice patience, to engage in honest dialogue, and to reinforce the lessons we had learned about empathy and respect. I realized that the process of healing was ongoing. Trust cannot be demanded, nor can it be fully restored in a single conversation. It must be nurtured through consistent actions, through listening and validating emotions, and through maintaining openness even when fear or frustration arises. And as I watched Priya and Arav navigate these challenges, I felt a sense of pride, not just in the house, but in the resilience and growth of our family. The house itself seemed to reflect the changes. The walls that had once absorbed echoes of anger now held laughter and quiet conversation. The garden, which had been neglected in the turmoil, bloomed again with care and attention. Even the old armchair by the fireplace, which had borne witness to the conflict, seemed to settle back into its role as a comforting presence. It was as if the physical environment mirrored the emotional landscape we had worked so hard to restore. Ultimately, the experience reinforced a truth I had always suspected but had now lived. Conflict, when handled with calm, courage, and empathy, can reveal deeper truths and create opportunities for connection and growth. What had begun with a slap and a demand had ended with dialogue, respect, and a renewed sense of family unity. The house, once a symbol of division, had become a symbol of collaboration and mutual care. Looking back, I understood that conflict is rarely about the surface issues alone. Beneath the anger, the fear, and the aggression are often insecurities, unmet needs, and the desire for stability. Recognizing this allows us to respond thoughtfully, to address the root causes, and to transform volatile situations into opportunities for reconciliation. As I sat in the quiet of the living room one evening, watching the sun set through the windows, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For Arav's guidance, for Priya's willingness to engage and reflect, and for the lessons that the house itself had taught me about patience, empathy, and resilience. The house, once a battleground of emotions, had truly become a home again. A home not just of walls and furniture, but of compromise, understanding, and shared responsibility. And as we continued to navigate the complexities of family life, I knew that the foundations we had rebuilt, trust, communication, and mutual respect, would sustain us through whatever challenges lay ahead. Peace had returned, not because conflict had vanished, but because we had faced it together and chosen to respond with courage and compassion. And in that choice, the house and our family were stronger than ever.